and of what time period. So what we've presented is that we're shooting for approximately 100% of fair market value as measured by the time period between January 1st of 23 to the present. Now, if you believe that we're in the very last breaths of a peaked out market and that in the near future it's going to drop significantly, then shooting for 100% of the most recent year probably isn't prudent. I don't believe that. I believe that typically a market goes stagnant before it goes down, and that if we set these values at this level, a year from now, they will not look high. I can't predict the future perfectly. So in towns that are very nervous about having values that might be over market or at market but only briefly, then the way we would address that is we would look at that 1 year back study, and we would look at those sales and we'd try to bring those in at 100% by lowering the assessed values. Now, I'm not recommending that to you. I'm simply pointing out that one of the reasons I'm here tonight is so that you can understand that difference and agree with what we've done so far, or give me guidance to drop this down a bit. So it helps sometimes to look at an individual property or two. See, if you flip to page 7 and 8, this is a property that sold 2 times. Are we all looking at map 24, lot 59, pages 7 and 8? So if you look at the upper center, you can see that in January of 21, this property sold for $242. Then you can see that in November of 23, it sold for $317. So that's the type of appreciation we've been seeing in the last 4+ years of the market. And so the appropriate value of that property today is somewhere around that $317. It's no longer the $242. The $242 is an old value. It's yesterday's value. This is just an example of a property that sold twice, so it makes it really easy to look at these types of changes. And as you look down in the lower right corner, you see that we're estimating a $314,000 value on this, which would be an assessment that is in concert with the market price.
What's it at right now, just out of curiosity?
Oh, I don't know that.
All right.
I didn't look at that. Way lower than that, but I didn't write down the current ones. So if you look at the next one, pages 9 and 10, it's really just another example of the same thing. This one sold in November of 2020 for $316. It sold again in September of 22 for $345. We're projecting a value as part of this reval of $354. It's a little bit above that 22 value of $345. Not a lot by percent. That's a very small percentage. And the idea being that $316 is old and out of date. If we set the value at that level, this value wouldn't even be good today. And then by tomorrow or the next year, it would seem much lower. And as a third example, I thought just having a few different ones would be nice. On the third example, this one sold in 22 for $375 and sold in 24 for $399. So the pattern's pretty clear. These were convenient because they had 2 sales, but the more important thing to keep in mind is what do you want for value right now? We have, to this point, set the assessments so that they are in concert with the market data that we have from the beginning of 23 to the present. And we think that's the best place to put you. That's not required. The balancing act is this. If you want a program that's going to last a number of years, in almost any 10-year period, the values at the end of 10 years are higher than they were at the beginning of 10 years. So even if you look at it now and think, wow, these are pretty high numbers and this market won't go any higher, it also if it doesn't drop significantly, then these values would be good for quite a long time. If it does drop significantly, we could lower them at a later date. But if it continues to go up or just stays stagnant, then this 100% of the most recent data is your best bet. Some towns just never want to do that. They would always prefer to have their assessments lag. It's just, it can be easier. If you feel that way, this is the time to say it, because we can still adapt to that. We could adapt to have it merge more closely with the sales of that prior time window and try to move about 5% off the top here, hedging the bet against these values. Now, if the market continues to go up a bit, a year or two from now, you might be 10% off. If we shoot for 5 now, and it goes up another 5, now your gap's 10. So there's no right answer. It's just the answer that what you choose as a group. And what I think you should do, I've already suggested. I think we should go for the 100% of what we have in front of us. So any questions? That's a lot to digest in terms of numbers and time.
So, I guess for people out there whose houses have sold, that makes it easy, to some extent, right?
The data points are the easiest ones. It's
So-
extrapolating from those to the rest of the town that's a challenge.
Because, I mean, a very small percentage of houses sold.
Correct.
So now, how do you take the information you have here, which is, I don't know, 50, 60 houses that have sold in a year, and put it into the other hundreds of houses that are out there
Okay.
and make it fair and equitable?
Yes. So the way we do that, if you go back to, let's just use, for example, pages 7 and 8. It's just an example of a property. And if you go to the second page and look in the upper right corner where it says building style. So before we did any of these sales, before we did any of that analysis, we went around the whole town and we collected data on every property. And we collected data on them like we always have. And so on this property, it's a 2-story frame, it's got a certain size, it's got a certain grade, it's got a condition that generates a value. Every property that's approximately the same as this one, within a reasonable accuracy that the individual person going door to door can achieve. And as you know, we have pretty consistent people doing this. We don't pick up, you know, if we find we have new people, they either get closely supervised, right, or we use them once they've been seasoned. So we have pretty reliable people going out door to door. Their job is to make sure that when they get to a house, whether it's sold or not, they get this basic data. So I may not, one of the reasons that we're not on every sale price, that if you look at that sales study, that we have the variability. Some are 9% off, up or down. The reason we have that variability is we always hold first to what type of house is it, how big is it, what quality is it, and what condition it's in. That drives our value. And we don't monkey with those for a target point, because if you do, it undermines the integrity of the whole project. So we set those, and then we calibrate the pricing to get them to work with the sales, and then we assume that's going to make the values of every house, whether it's sold or not, at least fairly treated. Even if it doesn't track the accurate value as well, you know, bigger, nicer is usually better, and it has a higher value. So we use that, it's called mass appraisal technique, where you have certain numbers of things that you measure and put judgment on. If you measure accurately and use reasonable judgment, and then you apply the same pricing to everybody based on those data that you collected in the pricing model, that should provide fairness. And then, so once you've done all that, you calibrate it back against the sales to see if you're at the right target points of value. So we really do it the other way. We sort of set up all the data, collect it all, put it in the computer, then we start moving the value points within the computer to get it to where the sales work. But everybody moves. We don't just move the individual properties. Like we move the price per square foot. We move an area multiplier. We move a percent depreciation number. So you're tracking a very large volume of properties. The sales are simply the indicators. But behind that is the same mathematical treatment of all the properties throughout town. Now, on any given property, we could send two people to two properties that are very, very similar, and they could come back with different results. But the results typically aren't that different. Like, one guy won't go and call it a horrible house, and the next guy goes to something exactly the same and calls it great. We train our people pretty well. They are pretty reliable on it. Plus, we have a whole review process coming up here.